It is our pleasure to welcome back to our show our friend, former Cougar defensive lineman, and current BYU football radio analyst, Hans Olsen. Hans, welcome back to. You think that's cool, Blaine? Cool,
I love it.
I think
like
it's cool.
This is like a trip down memory lane for me, and I think we need to tell Hans right off the bat.
There he is. Hey, Hans.
Hans, there's only one O in the book. Like, just so you know, I didn't make it. I don't know if you were listening long enough. Dave just unveiled this new book of his. It's an alphabet book of BYU football, and
for the kids,
it's a kid's book, and each letter, Dave has represented a superstar that played. And of course, there's lots of great F players. So I didn't make the book, but Phantom Forti did, Eldon Forti, which I'm completely okay with. Hans didn't make the book, but I think Hans is going to be okay with who O is.
I hope so. Hans,
O is Bart Oates.
Nice.
Yeah, and Bart's Bart's got. People forget that Bart has more Super Bowl rings than anybody else that played at BYU because he's a Super Bowl champion with the Giants and with the Niners, right?
He was excited. I had to reach out to everybody. In fact, we were on set doing game day last year. During one of our commercial breaks, my phone buzzed. I looked down. It's Jim McMahon going, "Dave, I'd love to be in your book. Go for it." And because I had to get permission from everybody.
And it's fun because Dave mentioned, Hans, like you and I had lots of competition, the O's and the F's, there's a lot of them, but there's only one player whose name begins with X in the history of BYU. And now that I just looked at it, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah,
so, we're not giving them all away, Hans, though, because they have to get the book. Right. So we're just teasing people.
Hans, how you doing today? What's up?
Doing good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good.
We're doing great.
It's great to have you back on here. From a defensive lineman's perspective, how do you feel about BYU's boys up front? Because remember, when we were together in August, that was a big concern of yours.
They did much better against Texas Tech. I thought that Jackson Cravens and Nisa Mahe were fantastic. I actually gave Tyler Batty my game ball, even over the turnovers and the corners. And I gave Tyler Batty my game ball because I felt like he really controlled the edge. He dominated in special teams, forced fumbles, big plays, juiced up the team after getting spit on. And I felt like he was the catalyst for a lot of the defensive push. So I gave Tyler Batty my game ball. And then we gave Nisa Mahe the steel man of the game because Nisa did a lot of work without a lot of recognition. But there was a reason that Taj Brooks was below his season game average, and there was a reason that Texas Tech couldn't get to their season rushing average, and a lot of that started with Nisa Mahe.
Yeah.
Jackson Cravens has been a pleasant surprise. I think he's been very solid all year. I was bummed because John Nelson went out of that game. I don't know how serious that is, but I was bummed to see John Nelson go down because he's been fantastic, moved into that 3 technique. And, I think Isaiah Mania has just been a body. He's just been a guy out there. I'm hoping that John Henry Daly can become a bigger, more usable piece. He's been getting some reps and he's been getting on the field. He has not made his presence ultimately known, but I thought that was the best the interior line had played all year just on Saturday against Texas Tech.
Hans, they on our AFR show, you talked about Tyler Batty and how disruptive, like he was disruptive in this game in a lot of ways, right? On D-line and in special teams. On our AFR show tonight, Dave and I and Dave Nixon highlighted that play he made on the punt. And I was taken back because he's part of that last protection shield. So he's not the guy that's supposed to run down and make the play. He kind of trails everybody else because he stays in to protect the punter, and then he goes down and looks for some work. I was really taken back by his effort because he rarely gets involved in a tackle on that because they make the tackle. McKenzie makes it way down the field. But we watched him, and once it was his time to release, he sprinted down the field, sprinted across, and I mean that hit he put on that return guy was something special. What does that say about Tyler Batty and effort when he's putting out that kind of effort when there's a very slim chance he's even going to be involved in the play?
Well, I think he was really ticked off, and I'd be pissed. somebody spit in my face, and it wasn't just the spit in the face. Those Texas Tech guys, I guess, got pretty active on social media, and they were pulling some pretty shady pranks, not only with Tyler, but Tyler's significant other. And it sounds like it was a lot of lowbrow business, and those guys deserve to be broken half. And at the end of that game, Tyler even tried to bury a hatchet, and they spit in his face again.
Yeah,
and
it was crazy.
Tells me a lot about their low character. And I actually reached out to a guy that knows that roster really well, knows those guys really well, and I told him this is about as despicable as it gets, and he agreed, and he knew who it was, and he said that he was going to make some type of effort to let it be known that what happened in that post game. So I hated the whole thing, and when players go too far, that's what happens, and I think that it flipped the switch in Tyler Batty, and I'm just hoping that switch stays flipped the rest of the season, because he does a lot of good things when he's ticked.
Yeah, he does. I think he does.
Hey, what's your thought on the we've covered. Hey, I could see your background now. I thought it was like you were sitting in a dark tunnel.
It was pre-Halloween.
Yeah, there we go. How do you think the defense has performed overall? They had injuries at safety. They're playing third and fourth safeties. They lost their two starters before the season even started. New corners. Ben Bywater goes down. That's a lot to happen in the back end. But overall, I'm interested in your assessment through 7 games.
Well, I think in the early parts of the season, I think the defense carried them. And I think that this is a league that doesn't pride itself in defense. It's a league that really prides itself in offense. And I think with Kansas, and I think even Cincinnati, and certainly Texas Tech, these are some really good offenses that can attack you from a lot of different areas. Kansas in the second half, I thought, was spectacular. So, you could put some heat on the defense and wonder why they're in the basement on quite a few of their statistics. They're in the bottom 100 on a few different major defensive statistics. But I think that they're facing some real formidable opponents. By the time you get through Anthony Brooks this weekend, you will have had 3 running backs that are like in the top 15 of running backs in the country consecutively.
Yes.
And so people can be upset about the rushing numbers given up, or they can be upset about the defensive numbers that BYU's putting up. But you need to start with who they faced, and they faced some really good talent. With that being said, there's a lot of aspects of the defense that I really like. BYU's defense is one of the top in nations in takeaways. They've got 2 guys, two corners right now that lead the country. It's like number 3 and number 5 in interceptions, taking 4 and 3, 7 between the 2 of them. And you're looking at 16 takeaways as a team. That's awesome. If you compare that to a lot of teams in the country, you're looking at between 8 and 6 more takeaways than a lot. So I've loved their takeaways. I've been bummed that there hasn't been a little bit more action at the quarterback, especially with some of these young quarterbacks that they've been playing. I wish that they could have got to Hoover, the TCU quarterback.
Yeah.
And there's just, and Hoover was getting rid of it. And I know you can look at it and say, oh, these quarterbacks getting rid of it. Look, NFL quarterbacks get rid of it fast too, but you're seeing the best of the best. They still get there. They still hit the quarterback. They still pressure him. And I'd like to see the pressure boost up. I think they've got 7 sacks on the year. And, there's some players in this country that have 10, 11 sacks on their own. So I'm not overly satisfied with what they're doing in getting to the quarterback. I'd like to see more of that. And they are drawing up pressures too. You guys have seen an array, a diverse level of pressures that Jay Hill has introduced, incorporated, and used. They weren't as prevalent last weekend against Texas Tech, but they were really pushed out against Cincinnati, and in times they were used against TCU. My guess is you're going to get aggressive against Texas with this freshman or this redshirt freshman quarterback. So I would imagine you get a little bit more aggressive with those. So to answer your question, if I had to give it a grade, I would give it in that C to C plus category.
Yeah.
Collectively, I'm still shocked by what these safeties are doing. Wakely is the one that forced that pick that Eddie Heckard ended up with. So those safeties are overproducing for what we expected a fifth and sixth string safety to do. I'm really proud of those guys. I actually want to just say that where this defense was to where it is, and Jay Hill trying to do what he's trying to do with the guys he's got, I'm pretty proud of him. But that doesn't mean I'm satisfied.
BYU football radio analyst Hans Olsen's on the Wise Guys tonight on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wiseguys.com. Cougar fans in Utah can also hear him every day on the KSL Sports Zone from noon to 3 p.m. on 97.5 FM and 1280 AM. Hans, the Cougars are just 6 of 28 on third downs over the last two games. What's your remedy to fix that?
We'll do whatever they're doing in the red zone. Figure out whatever they got going on that red zone, because that red zone is spicy.
Just extend the red zone to like 80 yards?
I mean, Hans, here's the number. They're 21 of 23 in the red zone, 16 touchdowns. So their touchdown percentage is also phenomenal. And so, which is baffling because it's usually harder in the red zone to move the football because you've got the end zone is like a backup, like you got a safeties lined up all across the back of the field. Everything gets condensed. It's harder to throw the ball in small spaces. It should be harder to run the football. Yet they're phenomenal in the red zone. I'm with you. It's so weird that they're so good in the red zone and struggle in the field on third down.
So a couple things, Dave. Number one, I think it's going to improve dramatically with Aiden Robbins back in the lineup, because third down is a product of first and second down.
Yeah.
And your third down conversion is only as good as your first and second down in giving you third and shorts. And there just hasn't been a lot of third and twos. In fact, I think on third and ones, I think they have a 100% conversion rate this year. So you get them into third and one, you get them into third and two. Aaron Roderick can do a lot.
Yeah.
But their average is like third and 7.8 yards. It's a long distance. And percentages are going to really drop off. So this might be wishful thinking, but I think with Aiden Robbins back in the lineup, I saw things from Aiden that I haven't seen from LJ. Mm-hmm. I've appreciated LJ's contributions, and I think he's going to have a beautiful future here at BYU. But Aiden did things that LJ doesn't. He made a lot of his moves at the line of scrimmage. LJ likes to read the zone more in a lateral take. And I like how Aiden crowds up to the line, uses his offensive line size, and pushes off of it. He also used the counter and the trap movements better. He went underneath them instead of trying to go over the top or through them. So I have a lot of hope that Aiden Robbins' experience, his veteran experience, will give you a first down rush that'll give you, on average, a 2nd and 6.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference. Huge difference.
And then I just really hope that the 2nd and 6s become more unpredictable because, Blaine, I'm sure that you're like me.
I'm almost out of – I know what you're going to say, and I'm almost out of my mind.
Yeah, I can almost read exactly what's happening on second. And TCU knew what was coming on second down. Oh, yeah. Believe me, they knew. So
they need to sell – because on second and 9 or more, the percentage run is ridiculously high.
Yeah.
If I was defending BYU right now, I would put 8 in the box and take my chances playing cover 0 or man free on the outside and just defending the run on 2nd and 10 or more. Yep. And I know that the analytics would say most teams will go pass defense, so they might bring in an extra defensive back. They play them a little more passive because they'll play pass on 2nd and 10. But nobody does that against BYU anymore. So now you end up in 3rd and 10 because BYU's tendency has been so overwhelmingly run that now it's and frankly, hey, the Chiefs are phenomenal offensively. The Miami Dolphins are phenomenal offensively. The Eagles are, these two teams we saw Monday night. They're not that good on 3rd and 10. Let me tell you, great NFL offenses aren't good on 3rd and 10. 3rd and 10 is not a good position to be in. And so I'm with you 100% on first down production needing to be better, and on the possibility of that happening with Aiden Robbins. Just seems to run so much more downhill, make his move at full speed, and finish with a low pad level. Kalani used the word that it's nice to have Aiden. He's a veteran guy. He's older. He's got a lot more experience. He rushed for 1,000 yards last year. He finishes, in the word that Kalani used, with way more violence. He runs with more violence. And I'm like, man, I love that word to describe how a running back runs. With violence, I vote for that. And I say, get them in better situations where they're not behind the chains. So I'm interested in your thought. You talked about it a little bit, but I want you to expand on this. Texas is going to start a young quarterback. It looks like they'll go with Murphy, whose career numbers are 4 of 8, 47 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. We may see Arch Manning in there, who's the number 1 overall recruit in the country last year. His stats are, I have no stats.
Right.
So regardless of which one of those guys it is, they're wildly talented, but they're young and inexperienced. What would you do if you were coaching this defense as an overall kind of scheme against these young quarterbacks?
Well, got a lot of thoughts on this. So Texas Tech comes in with one of the country's top 5 running backs, and they tried giving it to him early, and BYU took away the run. They did a really good job. Their intention was to run Taj Brooks until you bump the tires off the guy. That's what Texas Tech wanted to do. They didn't want to put any responsibility in that young kid's hands, and that rightfully so, because he was not good. Mm-hmm. They had an intent to run Brooks. When BYU made it difficult and started taking it away and then got the lead, and it forced them to put it in that freshman's hands, the game changed, and BYU had him. It is going to be a very similar situation against Texas.
And the guy's name's Brooks, too. This is Jonathan Brooks this time, right? That averages 6.4 yards a carry and has 825 yards. It's very similar, right?
Very similar. And he is a force to be reckoned with. Their intention will be to get him the ball 25 to 28 times. Their intention would be to hold the lead, maintain it, milk the clock, and keep it out of Malik Murphy's hands. What BYU's got to do is what they did against Texas Tech. They've got to go to Anais Amahe. They've got to get under Cravens. Hopefully John Nelson is back. They were playing some David Latu. I thought David Latu did well too.
Yeah.
Happy to see him out there. And, I think it'll be a similar outcome. If you jack up Jonathan Brooks and you force them into what we were just talking about, some 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, where now it's in Malik Murphy's hands, then I think you've got a real shot. But I think Texas is more adept to running the ball than Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. And I think that Jonathan Brooks is at home. He's going to be more comfortable, so it's going to take even more dog in the fight for BYU to get this stopped up and get it back in their favor. But mark my word, guys, if Texas comes out and BYU is able to stop up Jonathan Brooks in the first 3 offensive series, not stop him, but stop him up on a 3rd and 2, knowing that it's coming downhill. And you guys saw it with Taj Brooks. Mm-hmm. They knew it was coming downhill. They stuffed the gap, and they forced the 3 and out a couple times. If you do that to Jonathan Brooks, and if you get a 7-point, 10-point lead and you're moving into the second half with it, man, you're in such a good spot because I don't think Malik Murphy, especially against this defensive backfield that has they've become very elusive and they have become unpredictable. Watching Crew Wakely float into that passing lane, and then I talked to Crew Wakely. Greg Wrubell and I had a conversation with Wakely after, and I asked Wakely the format of that, and he said, well, we knew that this freshman was going to throw with his eyes. So I was in a cover 2. I came underneath the top route. I read his eyes right into the route. I batted that ball up, and that's how it came. Well, you're going to do the same with Malik Murphy. I think he's going to throw with his eyes because, as Dave mentioned, he's got very limited attempts.
Yeah. Right.
And you know better than anybody, Blaine, when you got limited attempts, your eyes tell a lot more than they probably should.
Yeah. Hey, Hans, I've mentioned this before. The first game I got in, I was a sophomore, and Mike Holmgren's our quarterback's coach, great coach. I feel like I'm ready to go, right? I'm ready to go. I'm hitting guys in practice. It's all great. First pass play called, I drop back. I cannot see anything. I'm like, everything's just, it's like colors blurring together down the field. So I just take off, and I just run over toward our bench. I get about 3 yards. I get out of bounds. And Mike Holmgren says to me, Blaine, what did you see? And I said, I just did this. I went, and I don't know if you can see me, Hans, but I went, it looked like this. And I just waved my hands in front of my face. It looked like this. and Mike, he pats me on the shoulder and he goes, yep, you're a sophomore. It's all fine. Eventually that will slow down. But that's what it looked like to me. It looked like a bunch of hands and colors. And I'm like, man, I thought I was ready to play. I was not ready to play, right? And over time, with more and more reps in practice and getting in games, things slow down. By the time I'm a junior and I'm going into a game when I've played in a bunch of games and we're playing Michigan for a national championship, I'm like, this is easier than practice. These dudes don't know what we're doing, right? But I'm telling you, when you're a freshman, it looks like this. That's what it looks like out there. And that's what it looked like for Texas Tech's quarterback last week. And I don't care whether you're a 4-star, a 5-star, you're Steve Young or John Beck. When you're a freshman and you have 4 attempts in your career and you get out there, things don't look so great out there.
No. Hans, what's it like? What's it like from a defensive end perspective when you know you've got a young quarterback rattled?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. I think you keep it in your mind not to underestimate them, but you also unleash yourself quite a bit. You don't want to underestimate them because you don't want to be the cautionary tale. But you do feel like you can take more chances to try to create more chaos because you feel like the more chaos you can present, the more likely he's going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
There's another factor to this, guys, that I'll throw on, and it's probably too deep of a level, but and maybe I don't have the true read on this, but Malik Murphy has the greatest high school recruit in this country's history that's sitting on the edge of the bench.
Right behind him. Yeah.
You guys heard the comments coming from Steve Sarkisian that he had his best practice he's had. We had Cedric, I think what's his name, Cedric Hills. He's one of the insiders there with Texas on today, and he said he's heard more noise about the level of Arch Manning's practices over the last few days than he's ever heard before.
Wow.
An indicator that it's getting close. So think about this now, Blaine. You're out there trying to throw those first few reps, and you've got a Manning sitting right behind you. It's a lot of pressure, Dave.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it can force one of two things. It forces him to galvanize, be strong, be intent, be careful with the ball, and make great plays, or it forces him to make stupid mistakes. So I hope that it's the latter. And I hope that he's out quick, and I hope Arch Manning comes in, and I hope that he feels the pressure and the freshman jitters and makes mistakes too.
Yeah,
it really is interesting, Hans. As I'm looking at this roster for Texas, and I'm watching film this week, and I'm like, whoa, man, 1 is something special. We were talking about this earlier. Wow, 41 on D. Man, this Ford kid is something amazing, right? And I was looking, and I was thinking, wait, last year, Bijan Robinson is the Doak Walker Award winner. They're starting running back. And now I'm watching Jonathan Brooks, and I'm like, this dude is a baller. This guy's an NFL running back. And then I realized that Texas in this offseason signed the number 1 running back recruit in the country, C.J. Baxter, and he's not even playing.
Yeah.
That's how. So he's the number 1 recruit in the country at running back, and he's not playing, right? The number 1 overall recruit in the country is Arch Manning. Hasn't taken a snap. That's how talented this Texas team is and the kind of recruits they get. Yeah. So expectations are really, really high. Now, having said all of that, we watched Houston last week, who doesn't have near the recruiting classes that Texas have. And as I watched that film, I'm like, whoa, Houston's roughing them up. Like, Houston played really physical with them. They got into their offensive line. They roughed them up a bit. Quinn Ewers, their starting quarterback, who's phenomenal, gets hurt, and Houston's in the game. And I'm thinking, as talented as this team is, BYU's got a shot on the road, especially with the fact that they're playing a freshman quarterback, even if that freshman quarterback's name is Arch Manning.
BYU's got a shot. They 100%. They've got a shot. And I watched Donovan Smith, as you were talking about the Houston quarterback. I felt like he outplayed Quinn Ewers through the majority of that game. And he threw for nearly 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Houston couldn't run the ball to save their life. I mean, they looked a little bit like BYU in that regard against TCU. They couldn't get the ball going, but they didn't need to. And they had receivers running free down the field. Texas has some real issues with their backfield, their defensive backfield. I'm a little bit worried that this is going to be a splash of cold water in their face.
Wake them up a little?
TCU loss. Yeah, the TCU loss for BYU, I think it shook some nerves, embarrassed them, and woke them up. I think that's probably going to be what happens with Texas in their defensive backfield. But there's some real passing opportunity there. And Aiden Robbins is an ace in the hand. And Chase Roberts has been just a mainstay. And Cody Epps is a wild card. And we still haven't seen the best of Isaac Rex.
Yeah.
And the offensive line has improved. The change they made 2 weeks ago has now solidified. I thought that Paul Miley had his best game as a Cougar, even though he's been the highest graded run blocker. I think he had his best game as a Cougar against Texas Tech.
So when you talk about those changes, Hans, so people know, they took Paul Miley and moved him. He was playing some center time. They moved him over to right guard. Right, they've got Payback at center. Now they've got Lapuahu at left guard, and they're starting Keim at right tackle instead of Eddying. And of course, Sua Mataia is starting at left tackle. So that lineup together seems to be communicating better, picking up better, getting a little more push. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, it wasn't that way against TCU.
Right,
it looked horrible.
Yeah,
I'll just be honest, and I think all of them could look themselves in the face and say it looked horrible. TCU had a lot of free activity, but I do think that 3-3, I call it a 3-3 stack with the hybrid safeties.
Yeah, 3-3-5 is Broncos' old D that Rocky Long basically brought to college football, right?
Yeah, and see, a lot of people call it the 3-3-5, but I think it's a hybrid of that, Blaine. There were too many nuances of that defense that were outside of what really Bronco did. They specialize 2 hybrid safeties that are used differently, that are excellent, and were in the backfield for BYU and unaccounted for. And I think that it really screwed Slovis up. I think that 3-3 stack, the 3-3-5 was just a nightmare for him. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's ever seen it.
No, he said he had.
He mentioned after the game that it was a defense that he had never really gone against, and it caused problems.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. And so TCU made that front look bad. Texas Tech, they looked phenomenal. Connor Pay looked more comfortable. He was setting into his combos. Like I said, I've got high hopes for that front 5 against a traditional defensive front. I don't think there's a defensive front in the country in a traditional setting that doesn't use alternative penetration that they can't handle. So I feel really comfortable about these guys moving forward. Plus, I don't know if Funk changed into some man concepts, but I did see some concepts that I liked a lot better.
Yeah. Interesting, Hans, and I'm interested in your experience when you're at BYU. When you're in the NFL, everybody's great, right? But when you're in college football, you're at BYU back in the day. I'm just thinking, like, when we played Georgia or we played Ohio State or we played Michigan, the thing that always struck me was, well, these dudes just line up and play. Like, they're not tricking us. They're basic. They run basic things, and they're just better than everybody, right? And when I watch Texas film, I'm going, man, Texas Tech does a lot of things and formations and all that offensively, and they do some things TCU defensively, a lot of things that really make you think. Texas lines up and plays football on both sides of the ball. Very, very basic. They just say, we're going to be better than you and we're going to beat you. There's a certain aspect to that that's good for BYU because BYU's physical enough to hang there, and it's not that confusing. Are you seeing the same thing?
1,000%. Give me a traditional set, because I really believe this 5 can fight with anybody. I just felt like TCU. I don't want to go too far into that stupid 3-3 freaking hybrid. I hate it. I hate the block against it. But the concept behind that with an offensive line, when you got 3 that push against 5, it creates gaps. I don't know if you can see my fingers.
Yeah, we see it.
That.
Yeah.
It creates gaps like that.
Vertical and horizontal gaps, right? Yeah.
If your 3 hit the 5, it goes here. And then the back 3 fit through those lateral gaps. And that's what TCU was doing. They were hitting those 3 fronts into the 5. They were getting this, and then the next 3 were rushing, and they were hitting into those lateral gaps.
Yeah.
And it's a freaking mess. I hate it. I hate blocking on the
It's behind us. Hands, it's behind us.
Yes.
We've moved on.
I know, but like watching Isaac Rex not be able to get off a combo because he's trying to push, and watching the lateral pressures come in and get tackles for a loss. So give me a Texas.
Yes.
And I think that Connor Pay and Waylon Obuaho, I think that Ikaim and Kingsley, and I think these guys are going to be just fine. I don't think they're outmatched man on man. And I don't think the same with Jackson Cravens and Nice Amahe on the other side.
Yeah, they're fine.
You know what, man? Just shake this thing up a little bit. Shake it up. Come in pissed off. Come in and own it like you owned it when Taysom Hill was there. You know, that 40 plus to 3 whooping or 7 whooping that they put on them, they still feel it. They know it in that stadium. Yeah. BYU owns a 4-1 advantage in this matchup.
Yeah, Texas, they know BYU's whooped on them before. That's always in the back of everybody's mind down there.
Hans, it's great to see you got your game face on a Tuesday.
Yes, I love this. I love this.
Maintain. Look, he's ready to go.
I want to see them with that. I hope somebody spits in Batty's face in the opening warmups. And I hope somebody spits in every one of their faces in the opening warmups, and they play like they've only got 1 game left in their life to play. Because if they can knock off a highly ranked Texas Longhorn team, it puts them right back into the Big 12 conversation. Now Texas has 2 conference losses. BYU will have the tiebreaker on Texas with the head-to-head matchup. And I know things get tough because you still got Oklahoma, but they got to come to LaVadward Stadium.
Right.
And Blaine and Dave, you guys know this, just being a part of BYU. We've never feared anybody at BYU.
Nope.
I didn't fear anybody. I mean, yeah, we had to play Alabama. Yeah, we played Florida State in Jacksonville Stadium. We did those things, but we never thought, oh, man, it's Alabama. Oh, it's Florida State. Oh, it's Bobby Bowden. No.
And I can tell you Kalani's approach this week, this team knows they've beaten Texas 2 in a row and handled them, and that they're 4-1. And Kalani's very respectful, and he wants these guys to respect their opponent and respect the guys they're playing across from, but they don't fear this team at all.
Well, and you know, Steve Sarkisian has coached against BYU twice since leaving there as a player, and he's 1-1. He beat BYU with USC when Norm Chow was the offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback's coach, and he lost when he was the head coach of Washington.
Yeah.
BYU got him, and so Steve Sarkisian's even got a little bit taste in his mouth, like these. He knows he was here. Yeah. I played with him.
Yep.
I know how Steve thought when he was with BYU. He knew how BYU thought. The world was stacked against you. You know, it's you and your teammates. They bring extra pressure because of the religious undertones, and it's just going to be a dogfight. And and you go out there and you pop them in the mouth, and you're like, yeah, we may not look like a traditional football player, but we're still angry.
You can hear Hans.
That's what they did against Texas Tech, and I want to see that.
Played angry. I love it.
You can hear Hans, Greg, and the radio crew from Austin, Texas, Saturday morning, starting at 11:30 Mountain Time on BYU Radio. Hans, you're ready to go. We're so grateful to have you for a few minutes tonight, and appreciate your insights. You're doing great on your broadcasts, and we just wish you continued success.
I'm ready to go. After you being on the show, I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to go play.
Let's shoot up and go get them.
Let's go get them. I love it. Thanks,
Have fun down there.
We always love having you on with us, brother.
Hey, love you both. You guys do a great job, and thanks for all the confidence, and thanks for getting my back on all this. It's been a real fun time getting in that booth, so I appreciate you both.
You've been amazing. We love you, Hans. Thanks, brother.
Hans Olsen with us today. Played defensive end at BYU, played offensive line and defensive line in the NFL, and the analyst on BYU Radio. And you can hear him again on Saturday, 1:30 Mountain Time, BYU in Texas. Television's on ABC. Game day on BYU TV starts at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time, live from our Provo studio and from Texas Memorial Stadium. 2-hour pregame show and live postgame show here on BYU TV.